panelists here today. So I just want to do really quick introductions, but basically they're going to spend a little bit of time telling you about their background so you can connect into them. What I would say is this is a great opportunity to, at one point we allow you to ask questions, and that would be great if you want to ask something specific to one person or get some general ideas. You know, that's very, I think most people are welcoming that. Yes, okay, good. Because you can learn a ton from our different speakers. So on our far side here, we have Keely Wallace from the IWK, Manager of Communication and Corporate Giving. All right. We have Fadi Hamdan, who is with the, remind me again? YMCA, I just want to make sure I didn't get it wrong, right? Manager of Child and Youth Programs, so you'll get a completely different perspective there. Amanda MacDonald is with United Way and is with does the marketing and branding. So again, you'll see a very different perspective on from the three different presenters there. And then Debbie Eisan is responsible for, she's an elder in residence at the Mi'kmaq Native Friendship Center and is responsible for a lot of the community development initiatives. So really great mix. I want to thank you, a huge thank you to Betty Watson-Borg, where are you right there, for helping to recruit such amazing panelists. And we'll get started with Cassidy asking the questions. Reminder not to leave the back doors, please. I'm going to be up there, but it does interfere with some of the panelists in their presentation because there is some taping going on as well. Thank you very much.
Okay, hello everybody, and welcome to the nonprofit panel. My name is Cassidy Shatford, and I'll be your moderator for today's session. We'd just like to begin by acknowledging and paying respect to the Indigenous people of the land on which we meet, the Mi'kmaq people. Mount St. Vincent University is built on unceded Mi'kmaq territory. We also pay respect and knowledge embedded in the Aboriginal custodians of this land and to the elders past, present, and future. So before we get started, there are a few housekeeping items we just want to go over. In case of an emergency, please evacuate through the nearest fire exit. However, as Heidi mentioned, we please like to only exit through the bottom doors and do not exit through the top. It interferes with our filming and it's just distracting. As many of you know, this is a learning passport eligible event. In order to keep things efficient, we ask you to complete your survey and booklet page before receiving your stamp at the end. So Miriam will be around to pass out surveys if you haven't already received them. And yes, you will receive your stamp at the end. We please remind everybody to mute your cell phones and please do not be on them during the session. We're all taking time out to present to you, so please try to be respectful. And we ask you to please remain seated and postpone any questions to the end of the panel. We'll have about 15 minutes for you to ask our professionals anything you like. Awesome. Okay, let's get started. So, our first question will be to please briefly describe the organization you work for and your position. Debbie, would you like to start?
Sure. I work for the, thank you, the Mi'kmaq Native Friendship Center. I am the community events planner there as well as the resident elder. We look after a myriad of services that are available to urban Indigenous folks here in Jabuktuk, Halifax. We have 35 programs right now that is running, and for me, I mostly take care of the cultural aspect, but I plan all of the community events and do a lot of the cultural teachings and sharings that happen throughout Jabuktuk.
My name's Amanda, and I work for United Way Halifax. For those of you who don't know, United Way Halifax is a donor-funded kind of community building organization. They exist all over the world, but each individual United Way is kind of based on the geography that it represents. So we represent HRM, so the Halifax Regional Municipality, and we focus on funding programs that are on the ground, dealing with issues of poverty, affordable housing, and homelessness, as well as social isolation, or kind of building inclusive communities is what we call it. So an example of a program that we fund is a program at the Mi'kmaq Native Friendship Center. So we work with other nonprofits in the city to make sure that that they have funding and support to run the programs that support the community that we live in. My role specifically is I'm called the Marketing and Branding Specialist. So that covers a whole host of things, which you'll probably learn about in the panel. But essentially, I'm in charge of kind of how we look and feel and sound to you, to the general public, and to our other kind of stakeholders and audience members. I kind of partner with other community building partnerships or events and that sort of thing. I work with a lot of storytellers, so people who have received support from programs that we fund or who have worked with us directly, and support them in telling their story and communicating with donors the change that they're supporting in our community. And I kind of am in charge of donor communications, so just the way that we communicate with our donors and expressing their impact that they're having, and the work that still needs to be done. So that's me.
My name is Fadi Hamdan. I work at the YMCA, part of YMCA Halifax Dartmouth, but our YMCA is called the YMCA Center for Immigrant Programs. We work with newcomer families, so immigrants and refugees first when they come to Halifax and Nova Scotia also. My position, I'm the manager of child and youth programming, so I'm responsible of all the child and youth programming that we have at the center. We have an in-school program, after-school program over the weekend, and also part of my job is to talk a lot in communities about diversity and inclusion, and then about newcomer challenges and successes and what they bring to the communities here in Canada.
Keely, Wallace, Manager of Community and Corporate Giving at the IWK Foundation. So the IWK Foundation is the funding arm for the IWK Health Center. The IWK Health Center is, of course, the only tertiary care children's hospital in the Maritimes, and we are also a women's hospital. My team, I run a team of 5. We call them relationship managers or fundraisers across the Maritimes, mainly here in Nova Scotia, but we have a full-time staff member in New Brunswick and a part-time staff member in PEI. So we work with our cause partnerships, our corporate partners, so everything from Walmart to NSLC and RBC, and of course to our third-party community events, and right down to Little Jimmy's lemonade stand, who's bringing in $200 for the kids at the IWK. We do a lot with the telethon that happens on CTV each June. It's June 6th and 7th this year if you want to volunteer. And we work with the donors, of course, to help meet their philanthropic needs.
Awesome, thank you. So for question 2, how did you come to work in nonprofit, and how was your education and experience led you to your current position? So this time we'll start with Amanda.
Okay. So I studied commerce at Mount Allison University, and then after that, I spent some time just doing random jobs, and then doing some traveling, and then went back to school, came to Halifax to go to NSCC to study public relations. At the time that I went to school, there was no specific training in nonprofit, so it's really exciting to see that kind of come about, because I think it's a really special industry. So while I was studying at NSCC, there was a lot of encouragement to volunteer. So I was connected with a couple of nonprofits through that program, and did some volunteering, and then when I graduated, those relationships that I had created helped me get a job very quickly. That's the good thing about nonprofits, is that they can kind of take someone who doesn't have a ton of experience, but you can pull from so many different transferable skills and really start a career. So I started working for a different nonprofit here in Halifax called Phoenix Youth Programs, and I was really focused on events when I first came into the industry. So I was there for a couple of years, and then because I was still young and not exactly sure where I wanted to end up, I wanted to try to work in the private sector for a bit, so I worked for a marketing agency, which was a really great experience. And then when I was there, I kept, putting my hand up to take on the nonprofit clients, and really just felt like my heart was in the nonprofit industry. So that's when I came back to the industry and started working for United Way Halifax. Yeah, that's me.
I'm an immigrant myself, so 12 years ago I entered the YMCA doors to get services. And then I went to school. I studied computer science actually at St. Mary University. But after graduating, while in school, I was doing a lot of volunteer at the YMCA. And when I finished, I said, hell no, that's not what I want to do. Computer science, that's not for me. And then I really enjoyed working with people, learning a lot from the clients that we work with. And then I just hold a part-time position in the beginning after my volunteering. I was doing a lot of youth programming after school. And then again, when I graduated, I begged them to hire me for a full-time position. And I've been with the Y for almost 11 years right now, doing different positions and different programs. So yeah, computer and science, I haven't done or touched anything for 12 years right now.
I graduated from the University of New Brunswick with a Bachelor of Arts and quickly realized I needed more education so I can get a job. So I did my postgrad in public relations at Humber in Toronto. The great part of that program was that you had to complete an internship in order to graduate, and I was only the one in 30 who purposely went for a nonprofit internship with the Stephen Lewis Foundation. I entered the nonprofit space in the media comms side, just mainly doing media comms for events, campaigns, and Stephen Lewis. But I kind of got drawn more to the mission side. I really wanted to be closer to the funds coming in the door, so I quickly moved over to the fundraising side. I've had great opportunity to work in different parts of this industry, so post-secondary side, women's services, and at 2015, I found myself at the IWK Foundation. I've held several positions there and held this position for 2.5 years. I would say that the PR background really taught me how to actively listen, but also ask the right questions to get the information that you need, and I think that's something that has served me very well in this industry.
Well, my story is a kind of a different one. When I was 17 years old, I graduated from high school in Sault Ste. Marie, Ontario. I'm not Mi'kmaq, I'm Ojibwe, Anishinaabe Kwe. And 2 months after I graduated, I signed up for the Canadian Armed Forces. I spent 36 years in the military and retired from the Navy as a Chief Petty Officer on a Friday. And then on Monday, I started working at the Friendship Center. And the reason I did that was because being from Ontario, and when I came to Halifax, I was displaced from my family and my community and my culture. So I really needed to have that connection, even though I had my husband and my children. I needed to have that connection to the Native culture. So I spent a lot of time at the Friendship Center, and they really helped me to feel at home here in Mi'kmaq territory. And in 2000, I sailed the Arabian Sea after 9/11. And when I came back, I started working with the military on educating people in the military on Indigenous culture and helping them to understand the importance and the history of Indigenous people. So when I left the military, I knew that I wanted to continue to work with my people here. And I knew that I could take the skills that I learned throughout my military experiences, from leadership training to many different types of courses that I took. So it was with those skills that I gained through the military, I brought to the Friendship Center. And because my background is logistics, I was able to provide the logistics services for the Friendship Center that they didn't have before through organizing different events at sea on board ship, organizing different events for cultural activities throughout Halifax here with the Navy. And I've been there ever since, now going on 10, 11 years. I developed into the community events planner, and the elder portion of what I do is not something that you apply for. It's something that the community decides who's going to be an elder and who isn't. And I'm so very proud and very fortunate and very honored that the Mi'kmaq people have chosen me to be their elder here in Jabuktuk and to help them and guide them through many different things, but mostly my talents. I'm a grandmother and I'm a mother, and I like to listen. And I don't give advice. I don't tell people how to do things. I listen. And 99% of my time is just giving big old grandmother hugs. I work as the elder with Dalhousie University and St. Mary's University, and a lot of that entails students who are homesick, students who just need someone to listen to them. And then, especially if they're homesick for their families, that's where the grandmother portion comes in. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. For our third question, what do you like about your work? What do you dislike about it? And what do you find the most challenging? So this time we'll start with Fadi.
What do I like about my work? So again, when I was young and I really wanted to do computer and make money, and I thought that was the trending at that point. And then when I had my first part-time job and I was doing a youth work, and I went to this conference, not a conference, a camping trip with 20 kids over in Windsor. It's called Camp Mockingjay, somewhere in the woods. And then we went there, and I really started talking about the whole thing was about social justice issues and things that for young people. And at that point, I started opening my eyes about what's out there and the passion of working with youth and what can youth bring to the tables and the conversation and communities. And at that point, I started thinking and more explore the options of working with people, positions, and jobs available in the nonprofit sector that I haven't heard before about. So really invested more time and energy, so a lot of volunteerings and networking to get to know about organizations, what they provide in the city. And then again, what I like about my work is really working with people. I love people. Again, I worked with a phone company for 6 months, and I really went into depression after 6 months because I was just behind my computer desk, and really my interaction with people was very minimum. But with this job, I talk to people every day, and I feel I get to enhance my skills professionally and personally too. Like I learn a lot from people, especially the newcomer community that we're working with, about where they bring in and their cultures and languages. So I get to say hi in many different languages, and I get to eat different foods and celebrate different celebrations. But also not just the client that we work with, also the collaborations and the community that's happening that we through our work. So we get to do a lot of creative and innovative projects with the communities, with organizations that are out there. So I think the collaboration piece really makes it really fun. I get to sleep in sometimes, so the job is a little bit flexible. So I work late, so I come in a little bit, sleep in the morning, weekends, and again, it's just the flexibility in the job itself, like in terms of being creative and have energy to have ideas that really listen to and be supported is very important. Yeah, what I dislike, are we part about the disliked part too? The disliked part, I think sometimes is just because I'm really passionate about the work that we do, so I wanted to do it all. So I think it's just sometimes the capacity of how much we can hold and how much we wanted to do is a little bit overwhelmed sometimes. So the time could be a little bit, and also the nonprofit organization, the funding sometimes could play a lot of big parts of the program. So we are a nonprofit and we are federally and provincially funded. So it depends on what does the government have in this year and what is the plan. So that will play a role in terms of our positions and programming. Yeah, I think that was it. But most challenging things is for me to say no. I don't know how to say no to things, so I really just want to do a lot of work and collaborations and work. So, yeah.
No 2 days are ever the same. I do love that about this space. Sometimes you feel like you're getting your MBA and master's in psychology all at the same time. It's very fast-paced. For me personally, I really love the cause partnership space. So, whether it's educating the corporate world, the business world here in Atlantic Canada on how they can better meet their corporate social responsibility goals or see a better return on impact for, whether it's their employee giving program or a vendor program or a customer-facing program. It's a really rewarding space to be in, and that encompasses a lot of my work, and I do love that. For dislikes, there's a lot of deep-rooted misconceptions about fundraising in the industry as a whole, and sometimes that translates into different giving behaviors and beliefs. So, the idea that charities are sort of asking for a handout, that beggar mentality. I always say to my team, never go to a meeting like this, go to a meeting like you're shaking their hand, like you're a community partner. You're helping them be a part of something bigger than themselves. The idea that, nonprofits are this, we're always asking, it's that rinky-dink mentality, but it's quite opposite. We have to operate like a business, and we start at zero every year, and we can't ask the bank for a loan. That's not how it works. So oftentimes it's sort of fighting that traditional belief of what nonprofits are. There's a great article, Globe Mail article, and one of the opening lines is, what other sector of the economy refers to themselves by what they are not? Which really starts a whole other conversation. Most challenging, there is a ton of competition for donor dollars right now. There's $700 million out in campaign asks in Nova Scotia alone right now, which every cause is deserving and the need is really great. We're also competing for talent. Acquisition of staff is, and people who are trained in fundraising is a huge problem right now. And I think overall most challenging, similar to Fadi, but the need is always going to be greater than what we can raise. And that's a hard thing to sit with sometimes. So I always say, I want you to put me out of work. I don't want a job. And that's a challenging thought.
Hi. One of my favorite people in the world is Senator Murray Sinclair. He was a commissioner for the Truth and Reconciliation, and he said education got us into this mess, and education will get us out. And so one of the likes about my job that I love the most is sharing my culture with non-Indigenous people and Indigenous people alike, and helping them to understand how Indigenous people got to the point where we're at today. How we do that is I've done over 300 blanket exercises throughout Nova Scotia, and that's essentially sharing the history of Indigenous people from an Indigenous perspective, and it's one of my most favorite things to do. But it's about educating and sharing and helping people who can't help themselves, who are marginalized. And it's taking on that grandmother role is mostly what I do. And if I can make somebody's 10 minutes, 30 minutes just a little bit more brighter throughout the day, then that to me is a very successful day for me. I'm like with everyone else, my job is totally different from one day to the next. I never know what I'm going to be doing. I get into the office at 6 in the morning so that between 6 and 9 I can get all of the paperwork done I need to get done before the day starts out, because people don't make appointments to have mental breakdowns. People don't make appointments that they've been victimized in some way. So we have to keep our day relatively clear so that we can help. And that's where it comes in, the changes every day. Some of the dislikes that I have, not so much about the job, but about the situation, is every single day of my life I deal with racism and discrimination. It's not a fun thing to deal with, and it can be challenging, but you get used to it. I just had a conversation this morning about a brick wall, and people were getting tired of hitting a brick wall, but For me, I look at that brick wall, and when you put those bricks together, there's mortar that puts them together, but eventually, over the years, mortar starts to disintegrate, and when you see that little hole, that's when you sliver through, and you start getting on a good path. And I really feel that we're on a good path, but it sure takes a lot of energy, and it takes a lot of stamina to keep pounding away at that brick wall, but it's definitely worth doing. Also, dealing with intergenerational impacts of residential schools. People think that residential schools are in our past. They're not. We deal with them every day as well. I dislike it because it's a necessary evil that we have to deal with to get people through each and every day of their lives. Some of the challenge that we have is not new to nonprofits. I've got big dollar signs written down here on my paper. It's always challenging. We're getting very adept at writing proposals and going out and asking for help or partnerships with different things that we do. And at the Friendship Center, some of the things that we do, like needle exchange and the methadone clinic, those are challenges that we have to not only to help people, not just Indigenous people, but all people, to help them to get through another day of their life, but it's dealing with those people who don't understand the need for people to be on methadone, and don't understand the need why they have to have clean needles. If we didn't have that, we'd have needles all over the street. If we didn't have needles, we'd be having people overdosing. So it's hard. People who don't understand that, it's hard to try to educate them on understanding the need for those programs that have a black social cloud hanging over them. Thank you. Yeah. And also, one of our biggest challenges is at the Friendship Center is a safe space for us to work in, but to bring our clients into and to have community come into. Because right now we're in a very old building that we're using storerooms for offices because we've increased in the last 10 years from 9 programs to 35. And there's not enough space to do everything that we want to do and that we have to do to help our community. So you probably heard we are getting a new space, but it's again goes right back to the dollar signs to try to bring that space about. And the last thing I'm going to say is, and I'm sure it's not just myself, but it's anyone who works for a nonprofit, and you said it over here already, it's saying no to somebody. You spread yourself so thin that at some point in time, those people who work for nonprofits have a danger of burning themselves out. And that's challenge, that you have to have that work-personal balance. And if you spread yourself too thin, you can easily burn yourself out and not help anyone. So that's the biggest challenge, I think. Miigwech, thank you.
Yeah, I think everyone has really covered it. So I'll reiterate a couple of things that I like about working for United Way Halifax and for nonprofits. Flexibility, Fadi talked about. Depending on the workplace, I find that especially at United Way Halifax, and I think it would be similar, just you're given a lot of trust to do your job because they value you. There's competition. They know that you could go somewhere else probably and make more money, so they want to keep you. So there's a lot of camaraderie and collaboration between teams and working together to kind of achieve the goal. So your boss has trust that you will do the job that you have been assigned, and you'll go above and beyond and do other jobs as well. So I like that there's kind of less hierarchy and less, something that I do has to be approved by 8 different people. That's, for me personally, I wouldn't really thrive in an environment like that. And when someone trusts me to do a good job, that makes me complete that job well to the best of my abilities. So I really like that. And my favorite part of working with United Way is meeting the people that are being supported and changing their lives with that support, and helping, or just meeting them is the best part. If they're willing to share with me their story and work with me to tell their story to other people, to donors, to community, to just increase the awareness of the issues in our city, to open people's eyes whose eyes may be totally closed to those realities, that's really the best part for me. I meet incredible people, and that's a really great part of it. The challenges, it's the same across the board for me. Things that I don't like or dislike or find hard to overcome is just sometimes we're working in the world of poverty, and that's a big issue that covers off everything that they've already said, and it can be kind of like a struggle to just kind of say, well, yeah, we can solve poverty. It's possible, for sure, but you kind of have to remind yourself that it's going to take generations, and that change isn't really that easy to communicate to someone else who might not understand what needs to happen in order to make those changes. So that's tough for me to kind of, it's not as simple as like kind of ticking these boxes and then telling a donor, yeah, it's done, great, like let's move on to the next problem. So that just is a communications challenge, and how do we communicate the change that's needed and the kind of small milestones that are being achieved thanks to their kind of their buy-in, whether that's a donation of time or money or partnership in some way. So that's kind of a big challenge.
Thank you. So for our next question, what are the key skills and experience needed to work in nonprofit organizations today? So number 5.
I definitely think communication, I think we've touched on it a few times, is key. Certainly from the fundraising side of it, listening, active listening, intuition, relationship building. More and more these days, if you have sales experience, and I'm talking if you've sold a coffee at your part-time job at Tim Hortons, that is valuable. A thirst or a knack for data as well. Data is becoming more and more a part of how nonprofits are being, working smarter, not harder. Data is a great indicator for even your storytelling strategy as well. Storytelling in general in nonprofit is important. And I think, the skill, I guess it's a skill, is to just really be humble in your work. When you are working for a nonprofit, you can be a superstar. There's a lot of opportunity to learn a lot of skills all at once. But at the end of the day, I always say you never work a nonprofit for the money. So when your feet hit the floor, it can't be about the title that you're going to earn today. It's got to be about the difference that you're going to make.
So at the Friendship Center and for our nonprofit, it's important to understand that there's no corporate ladder. Excuse me, the only ladder that we have is the ones that we use to change our own light bulbs in our buildings, because and I say that because it's about understanding that when you come to work, especially at the Friendship Center, you could be doing what you've been trained to do one day, and in one morning, in the afternoon, you could be changing light bulbs, or we've cleaned bathrooms, we've cleaned up messes. Like, you have to be able to be open to do any kind of job that's willing to do, because a lot of us wear 6 and 7 hats. I do a lot of cooking at the Friendship Center for community events, but I've cleaned the bathrooms as well. So there's just, you have to be open for that and understand that you don't start at the bottom and expect to go to the top. It's just working with community. It's for community and about community at our center. The other thing is patience and be non-judgmental and humble. And I say this because we look at it from a two-eyed seeing approach, especially at the Friendship Center. We have worked so hard to bring the center onto the radar. And by that, for people to take us seriously and to take our skills and what we're trying to do for the Indigenous community here in Jabuktuk to help them. So we've worked very hard to do that. So if you want to come and work for the Friendship Center, you look at it from a two-eyed seeing approach, because a lot of our job positions are looking for Indigenous folks to come, but we do have non-Indigenous folks there as well. But to understand our history, where we've come from, how we've got, as I said before, how we got to the point we're at today, so that you can understand the nuances of our clients who come through the door. And it took a long time, it takes a long time for the Indigenous clientele to have trust. And it's, unless you're Indigenous, you could almost never get it. So a lot of our staff who are non-Indigenous who work with us work in our finance departments, in our human resources departments. They don't work frontline workers, because if you're non-Indigenous and you have someone coming through the door, you're not going to get anywhere with as a frontline worker being non-Indigenous. It's just a matter of trust, and it's the result of history that got us to the point where we're at today. So, not saying that because you're non-Indigenous you can't work for the Mi'kmaq Native Friendship Center, but it's just the whole history and the whole nuances of that specialized marginal people that we have, that we're working with, that makes it difficult to come and work. Once you do come and work for the Friendship Center, though, there's a sense of community, even though you're non-Indigenous, a sense of community, a sense of family, because of the very different jobs that we do. We have our finance people who work in the kitchen, our human resources people who, go down, and sometimes we hand out blankets to those homeless people under the bridge. And we just started with Out of the Cold, just started coming into the center Friday night. And, you never know what you're going to do. This morning I was helping people to fold their blankets. When I got in at 6, they were still sleeping. And they had my door to my office blocked, so I had to wake the lady so I could get into work. But you never know what you're going to encounter. So patience, understanding with an open mind and an open heart. Miigwech.
I think maybe I'll just draw on something that Keely said earlier, is that a nonprofit is a business. So we require the skills that you require at any other business, and there's different streams within that. Finance, data, HR, operations, accounting, writing, communications, marketing, like all of those things are required for our business as well in order to be successful. And I think you just need to kind of put some little stars next to a couple of things like resourcefulness. You're always going to be working from a budget that starts with 0 and that only increases based on your resourcefulness. Compassion. You have to come to work every day knowing or wanting to make a change. That's really how you choose nonprofit work, is instead of kind of looking at the job and looking at the skills that I have or the qualifications, do they line up? Well, is this a place where I can make the change that I want to make? And I call it hustle, similarly to what you say. One day you could be washing dishes, and the next day you could be pitching for a $1 million grant. Like, you kind of have to just be ready to roll up your sleeves and do whatever it takes. And relationship building is like 100% key. And that's not a skill that maybe you've taken a course on. That's just something that you are developing through any relationships that you have in volunteering and in jobs here at school. So just that's just, being kind, listening, checking in with people, and keeping in touch with people to kind of build your network. That's really what it's about in the nonprofit sector.
I think like everybody else mentioned, multitasking, that's a common thing happening. Really be open-minded again. And then in our organization, we have a lot of people who are from different backgrounds and educations and different level of education. But I think what really brings us all together is our passion to work with people. And also in our organization is the passion of supporting newcomers to Nova Scotia and Canada. So really open mind and multitasking, I think that's key skills. And I think really, again, as you mentioned, we work with a community that they deal with discrimination on a daily-to-day basis. So really being that ally to advocate for these communities and like in schools and after schools and then in workplaces. So navigating resources and support system for the newcomer communities. We're looking for skills like that, people who can navigate and support in terms of working with an anti-oppression framework.
Awesome, thank you. So next, can you tell us about the types of jobs that might be available for students considering a career with your organization? So I know you just kind of touched on this, but if you could just reiterate some and...
So yeah, I did talk about, but I've written down here, a lot of times, especially students who are in university, want to come and volunteer with the center. And so they're not specific paying jobs, but volunteer jobs. But to also remember that if you're studying to be a teacher or if you're studying to be an IT person and you want to volunteer with the center, doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to be doing those jobs that you're volunteering for. This is one of my hugest things is when people call me and ask to volunteer, because I'm the volunteer coordinator there, and I say, well, we have this job transferring shampoos. We have a project with the Delta Hotel, a partnership, and they provide us with their shampoos and conditioners and all that that people don't use or half use, so we get them donated. And it takes a lot of time because we can't hand them out in the Delta, or it's not Delta anymore, it's Halifax. The Halifax bottles, we have to transfer them to clear 4-ounce plastic bottles. People don't want to do that because it's not what they studied for, but it's a necessary thing when you work for a nonprofit. It's all those jobs that are there. So volunteering to do those jobs are where we need volunteers. But also, we have careers like IT, especially for me, for an IT, I buy our IT guy a $25 TIM card at the beginning of every month because I am IT illiterate and I need to be in his good books. So there's IT, there's HR, there's human admin assistants, the finance department. We have teachers who teach adult learning program. We have counselors for drug and alcohol. Community events planner job may be coming up soon. Even the executive director, those jobs are all available to do at the Friendship Center. Secretarial, we have someone who comes in who is a triage person who the people come in the door and they say, okay, you need an elder, I'm going to call Debbie for you. You need employment and training, we're going to set you up with employment and training. You need whatever it is, she's the one who sends. But also we're working on programs, and it all depends on the funding that we get and we're successful with our funding, whether we have nurses who come to once a week to help with blood sugar checking and mental health nurses and things like that. So there's always something, and on our website is where our jobs are posted for things that we need, and that's where you can have a look. But it's getting that foot in the door and getting the community to recognize who you are. It's not just someone coming in the door and wanting a job. You have to get that connection with the community first. Miigwech. Miigwech means thank you, by the way. Sorry.
I just thought about a couple of jobs that would be good for kind of more like entry-level students. Not that there's a huge ladder to climb, but this is kind of where I see a lot of younger people coming in to the organization. Volunteer coordination is like a really awesome and excellent and kind of like cross-departmental job. Things like digital savviness, digital content, social media, that's a really great entry point. Executive assistant or like lead administrator are really key to any nonprofit organization to kind of like hold us all together. Fundraising is like, if you want a job, go into fundraising. If you have skills in building relationships and are outgoing and comfortable asking, it's not going to end anytime soon, and it's we need more people in that field. Event management is also a really great place to start, and that's just being super organized and innovative and creative. Those are kind of some of the skills, and I'll let Fadi probably talk more about like actual program delivery and that sort of thing, I think.
Yeah, so we have a lot of child and youth workers. So we have a full-time staff who works in the schools supporting newcomer youth and children in the schools, but we also have a part-time jobs after school. So if you're looking for something extra to do on the side while you're studying, these positions are coming up very often. We have counselors that you mentioned. We have a job, people who help newcomers and other community members in looking for jobs and opportunities for work. And yeah, we have all kind of HR and finance and communication team.
My HR director would be very mad at me if I didn't mention we are currently hiring. We have 2 positions open. Digital content specialists. So again, like that, really trying to hone down on that omni-channel storytelling to our partners and our donors. And also, to further what you said, fundraising, we're hiring a major gift fundraiser. I will say there is a huge war on talent for fundraising professionals, but specifically for major gift fundraisers. If you can build relationships and you can make an ask, and whether you can currently make an ask or you think that you would be willing to learn, I think that you'll see over the next couple of years, there will be a lot of postings for major gift fundraisers.
Okay, thank you. Okay, for our next question, what are some tips you would give for students preparing resumes, cover letters, and also some do's and don'ts during the interview process? This is very helpful. So we'll start with you, Amanda.
I wrote some things down because I need to refresh my memory. I think it's really important for all of you to look for and highlight transferable skills from past jobs, volunteer activities, or just life in general. Just because you maybe haven't done that specific thing that's listed as the job title, that doesn't mean that you're not qualified for the job. I think it's really important for you to do lots of research into the organization and come prepared to the interview with lots of questions that are actually going to help you figure out if this is the job for you. It's definitely a two-way street. I know it can sometimes be a kind of a desperate, frantic search sometimes. So that's why I would also recommend having a stable or part-time side job or after-school program deliverer, just something that kind of keeps you keeps you afloat while you kind of can look into what might be more of like a career-oriented position, because it's a full-time job, looking for a full-time job. So I think you should just be prepared to put in the work. Make sure that your resume and cover letter are really reflective of the skills and qualifications that are listed in the job ad. So the less you make us or the HR people, whoever's reviewing the resume, kind of dig for, are they capable of this, or do I think that they could achieve that? You should just be saying it and make a little checklist of, yeah, I've mentioned that, yeah, I can cover that off. And then the last thing I would say is be honest. If there's something that I've applied for many jobs where there's kind of maybe one line that I'm like, Honestly, that's not something that I've done in the past, but I'm very willing to learn, and that's something that I want to be able to add to my resume going forward. So just demonstrate your eagerness and your belief and passion in the organization.
I struggled really finding a job again in the beginning as an immigrant for a year and a half because, again, I thought a lot of time because of my history of working in Canada. It wasn't a lot of history working in Canada, or my name could be different. So I really encourage you to consistently don't feel defeated if you apply for jobs often and you don't get a reply. And don't change anything about your identity just to fit in a job. So I think that was one of the key things I would keep saying for newcomers. Don't change anything about you just so you can get a job or to fit in a position. And really, reflect a lot. Education is really important, but also what have you been doing in the community on the side is more important. So really reflect a lot on that and on your resume and cover letter. And when you go to interview, as I'm going to say, like, you just really show that you're eager to be there and you care. If you just show up there just because you want a part-time job and you don't know what's happening there, I don't think you should go. But if you really care about the position and the work that you want to do, really reflect on the interview and also later on in the job itself.
I think most of it's been said. So if you get to the point where the hopeful employer is calling your references, please make sure your references know that they're possibly going to get a call. And if possible, if your references are open to it, having gone through the hiring process twice in the last year, if you're calling two references and they're both saying the same things, it's a missed opportunity to highlight different parts of you as a person and you as a potential employee. So, maybe say to reference A, I really want you to talk about my multitasking skills or the fact that I completed this project or that, I once did this amazing thing at university. And then reference B can highlight something else. So that way, your future employer is really kind of, when they call the references, they have a checklist of kind of what they want to hear, what are those last things that they're trying to get a sense of. So do that due diligence. And I guess the only other thing is, we know that when you apply for a nonprofit, chances are you have a connection to the cause or respect for the cause. It's important to demonstrate your why, but it cannot be the only thing in your cover letter. You have to talk about your skills, what you bring to the table, just like you would if you were applying to work at a bank.
A lot of the things that I have down have already been said, but from an Indigenous perspective, one of the things that I can say is don't be afraid to apply. Just because you're not Indigenous doesn't mean that you don't have talents that would be very useful to our organization. Don't let on that you understand everything about our culture, because it's very it can shut the door very fast on you if you say you know everything. You went to a course and now you know. We've had people do that before, and it can be very detrimental to your interview. And don't get discouraged if you've applied for different jobs. Some of the things that I can say that you can do, again, due diligence on your research about the Mi'kmaq people here in Nova Scotia, or the Ojibwe of Ontario and Manitoba if you're going there, but understand the territory of the people that you're, where the organization is that you're working for or that you're applying at. And if you can get the opportunity to do some volunteer work with that organization so that they would have seen your face before and that they know that you're interested in this type of organization and this type of work. So just two of the things off the top of my head for the Friendship Center will be the NAG Games coming up, the North American Indigenous Games. They're looking for over 5,000 volunteers for those games this summer. And I'll be looking for, one of my huge projects coming up is Maui Dajik, which is a competition powwow in June for 3 days. I'll be looking for volunteers to help out with that. So, it's an important thing so that the organization knows, oh, I've seen him or her here before volunteering and doing some work with us on a volunteer basis. So that shows that you're really interested in the organization. You're interested in helping out from an Indigenous perspective.
Okay, thank you guys. And finally, we just want to ask you what advice, quick word, maybe something that you wish someone had said to you, that you could give to a student to start their career. And we'll start with Fadi.
Again, if you go behind after the money and the fame, not profit organization, that's not the place. But I mean, again, I really love my work and I love my job, and again, just that itself, it keeps me happy. So I go home happy and I sleep happy, and I go to work, and I don't call it work. I say I'm going to the Y, and just that feeling of not going, feeling, oh, I have to wake up and do that job, and this give me motivation to do more and more. So what I really advise you to do a lot of volunteering, a lot of community connection, try to see where's your passion at, or what are you interested in, and what are you not interested in, and do a lot of networking. Again, networking, part of my job too is really to do a lot of community events and go to community events and just meeting people and the opportunity to learn about other people. It's honestly a privilege. I feel like in a day life that enhance, again, personally and professionally. So really volunteer and network. And then again, I know you're studying for something, but again, really try to, while you're doing that, navigate what's else out there that not just outside of the box, maybe a different box. So I know a lot of time we try to think about outside of the box. How about we try to totally for a different box, try to navigate what's out there.
I would say that when you're first starting out, everyone wants to know their own role inside and out, and you want to be irreplaceable, which everyone is replaceable, and that's a great thing. But one of the biggest lessons in my career and in nonprofit that I wish I had learned earlier is you should know your role inside and out, but also know how it affects other people's roles in your organization. So when you deliver something a day late, 40 minutes late, or 2 days early, you should know how that's going to affect, a person in 2 cubicles down from you. That is how you really, ground yourself in an organization and the mission as a whole, and that's how you truly, really learn those skills that you should learn to progress in an organization.
I agree with what's been said, but also from an Indigenous perspective, because that's the lens that I look through, is if you come to work for our organization, don't try to fix us, because we're not broken. And we want you to come and work with or for the organization, but you work with our community. So, thank you.
The last thing I'll say is just to reiterate, to work for a company or an organization that you believe in and that makes going there every day better for you. You spend a lot of time at work as an adult, or a wannabe adult, and so you want to be happy in that. That's a lot of time in your life to waste or to risk being unhappy. And just be prepared to put in the work for both finding the job and in the job, keeping the job, and growing within the job. So, yeah.
Okay, I'd like to thank all of our panelists today. And now we will open the floor to questions. So if anybody has a question, please feel free. This is a small group, so no question is a bad question. So could be, yeah, awesome. Yep. Thanks, Heidi.
Hello. I'd just like to ask, I know there's lots of volunteer positions. I've been volunteering for many, many years, and I've done 90% of the jobs you listed today. So I'd like to ask what the rate of pay is for actual paid work, because I've already done all the volunteering, believe me.
From a perspective at the Friendship Center, we can't put down the rate of pay will be, because we never know. It depends on our funding sources and if we're successful in our proposals that we write. So the pay changes from from one job position to the other. And because we're funded from the federal government, we have a pot of money that comes to keep our doors open. So we have to, it fluctuates. So for a nonprofit, we can't, I know from our perspective, we can't say that the pay is this, and for the past 6 years, there's never been a pay raise. We're at the same because it's our funding sources that tell us what the money is, so.
I will say, 10 years into this, it's a lot better now than it was. We just decided that every 2 years we're going to do a salary scan within the industry, both here in Nova Scotia, but just across the country, to taking into account different cost of living, et cetera, but to see where we fall. And that has kind of said, okay, this department needs to bump up, and we'll make a plan to get there. I think, as a fundraiser, I always say you should be bringing in 3 times your salary. So that's kind of the method that I go on to. It's, the more you raise, the more likely that the board is going to be to approve a raise. But I will say it is getting a lot better than entry level when I started was $24,000, which I think is drastically changed now. So.
I think for us it also is different too, because we have different YMCAs in the city, and one YMCA have different funding from the others, and ours are really federally and provincially. So in the association itself, we have different levels of pay, because the provincially we haven't get raised for like in the last 4 years, but the federally they get raised once a while. So it's really different. But maybe for the part-time position, again, I'm maybe promoting it. I think we have the minimum wage for that's a part-time position. I think it's around $17 to $18 per hour for the part-time position. But full-time positions is definitely very different.
Okay, does anybody?
I'll add to that, just because
Awesome.
Betty and I teach in the nonprofit leadership program. Keep in mind that universities, colleges, hospitals are all part of nonprofit sector, as well as charities, foundations, private trusts, public foundations. So that can vary immensely. You take the president of a university, they make some serious money. You take somebody who's in a finance department in a hospital, somebody who's in HR, they have very stable income compared to the sector for profit. When you get into some roles that are in more charity oriented, that are front line, you're going to see some of those pays that are going to fluctuate based on the program. So the answers that are given is that it's going to depend on which area you're entering into that sector.
And sorry, I want to add to biggest lesson I've learned, it's not just the dollar amount that they're paying you. Like, take into account the whole picture. I get this many vacation days. Our benefits are amazing. My office closes between Christmas and New Year's, and you don't have to take it off your vacation time. What's their mental health program? What are the partnerships they have with local gyms for membership fee reduction? What are your child minding? Like, keeping that stuff, and ask those questions in the interview. What's your benefits package? And really get into the nuts and bolts of it.
Awesome. Okay, does anybody else have any questions before we finish up?
I was really curious about community partnerships, and I love the example you gave. It was tiny, the hotel, the shampoos. And I think that also, like was mentioned earlier, we go into it not necessarily for the pay, but for the love of our community and connecting. So can anyone speak to interesting community partnerships that you've experienced through your work?
I'm just going to expand a little bit on that Delta project, and I just touched on it, but through the past 10 years, that partnership has developed into something far beyond what we could have done on our own. And I mentioned those shampoos, but also it's bedding, it's towels, it's anything that the hotels cannot use, they call us. And one of the biggest impacts for me was the first year that the Delta, I keep saying Delta because we call it the Delta Project, the Delta donated beds to us. And so I coordinated 100 beds that they changed out. And it was a first come, first serve, and community members had to pick up. With the exception of our elders and our seniors, we delivered to them. So the one lady we delivered, an older lady, and she came in the next morning with a dozen roses for me. And I said, "What is this for?" But it was the first time she had slept on a mattress in a bed in 10 years. And it was that kind of impact that makes you, it's that shot of penicillin in your arm to keep wanting to go. So it made me want to go out and partner and work with other hotels. The Cambridge Suites works with us sometimes as well. Just different things like that make it worthwhile with those kind of partnerships. And it doesn't have to be about the dollar signs. It's about what you can give to your community in kind and what you can do for your community. So, partnerships working with Halifax Regional Police. It would seem like a really weird kind of partnership, but that has developed into something where they have an issue with an Indigenous client that they get, for some reason, they know that they need an elder to come. That's what they do. They call and we diffuse the situation. Working with the fire department, I'm the elder with the fire department. So the same kind of thing. If they have a client that needs help from an elder, the client has had a hard situation and the fire department's with them, they'll call us and we work with them. And those kind of partnerships, that's helping community, but no dollar signs have passed, but it's building capacity within the community and building that relationship with those organizations and knowing that we're here to help each other and we're doing the same thing. We're out there to help the people and not be millionaires. I don't think anyone here at this table decided to work for a nonprofit because we wanted to buy a mansion on the hill. So, thank you.
I'll mention another quick community project that's just coming up for us in the next month. A lot of United Ways across the country work with 2 different community partners. So Bell Media is one, and then any sort of like labor or union relationship. So it varies based on the province. So last year we started working with the NSGEU, which is like the General Employees Union. So like thousands of union members across the province, and we worked on an initiative called Tampon Tuesday, which is kind of like the Tuesday before or after, it varies, International Women's Day. And so that's an example of, similarly to what Debbie was talking about, something that's in kind, so like a gift of like a thing, so in this case, menstrual products. But this partnership I found was really interesting because it went beyond just the donation and the collecting of menstrual products, which are like a huge need, but it opened up the door for a conversation that really took off, and that was really the really good kind of offshoot benefit of that. So talking about period poverty in the news and with other organizations around, and then seeing those impacts kind of happen. Like now the library has free menstrual products and schools are trying to introduce that, and any sort of Halifax rec properties, and a pharmacy in Highfield Park was like, yeah, we have free menstrual products now. And just forcing that into the conversation and moving it beyond just a women's issue, and it's a human right issue. So we kind of were able to use our partnership with NSGEU. They were kind of like led the charge and the collection, and then we were able to kind of speak to the impact or open people's minds to the fact that if you're living on income assistance or living below the poverty line and you can't afford a box of tampons, that could prevent you from going to your job or going to school because you're not able to, or you don't feel comfortable leaving your house, and that is just unacceptable. So I think that's a really interesting of something that went beyond an in-kind donation and kind of had this other benefit to it.
I think for us too, like partnership, it depends. It could be a project on a one-day project, or could be an ongoing. So I think with the 4 organization here, we did a collaborations in terms of exchanging between our youth groups or events with United Way, with the IWK. They do an ongoing orientations for our families, newcomer families first when they come here, for example. But there is the ongoing partnership that we have. We have a lot with the libraries, and we host our English classes and homework clubs for newcomers in different libraries, and also with the school board. So we have our staff work in the schools collaboration with the school board. But yeah, I think it depends on different from a one-day project or an ongoing things too. But I think it's great to happen both ways.
I know you're super short on time, so I always say I tend to focus a lot on the corporate partnerships, but if you have to give one of these, time, talent, or treasure. So ideally you want the treasure, you want the donation, so you can do experts can do the vital work. But the talent is that gift of services in kind or actual goods in kind, and then skills-based volunteering or volunteering as a what's available.
Okay, thank you to all of our amazing panelists. That was super interesting and very helpful for all of our students and myself. So I just want to give everybody a reminder that we will come down here to Miriam to get your learning passport stamped, and you need to have the career panel survey filled out before you get your stamp and your activity booklet. Okay.
Is it on? Okay, just a really quick one. If you would like to get involved in understanding a little bit more, especially about what Keely and Amanda have been talking about with fundraising, Social Enterprise for a Day is on March 5th and March 6th. And we'll be having Hope from Wildlife will be in speaking. And then the next morning, we have all of our students hit the streets doing fundraising campaigns, learning a little bit about how a social enterprise works. So remember those dates, March 5th and 6th, and you can sign up with, I think, Miriam, and we'll look forward to having you there. Thanks.
Thank you.